Pay attention to your thoughts. Your thoughts are the key to everything. Also, know this: a belief is simply a thought you think over and over again. So when limiting beliefs about ourselves, like I could never do that, or I know I won't succeed, or that's just not for me, when those come up, it's time to stop and ask yourself if those thoughts are really true. Or are they ideas about yourself that you learned growing up, or maybe just along the way, that may need to be challenged? Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. I wanted to start off today's episode with a few things. First of all, I have to say this podcast has allowed me to step into a space with all of you that I think is incredibly important. This is a space that allows us to bear witness to others' experiences and all the vulnerability that goes along with it. And the incredible outcomes these women have created is mind-blowing. Now, I've worked with individuals to navigate change for many years, and I can tell you, listening to not only the transformations that have taken place with the women I've interviewed so far, but the ripple effects they've had on others in their lives as a result has literally left me speechless. This is actually where the magic really happens. I truly believe sharing these stories allows us to see how much possibility is out there and available to all of us to create whatever we want in our lives. I also get to share with all of you what I've learned over the years in working with individuals and teams to navigate change as you contemplate making those bigger little shifts in your life. The feedback I've received so far has been priceless, and I want to continue to help bring these concepts out into the open to help you overcome any obstacles that are getting in your way. Now, my intention is to provide you the inspiration, guidance, and support you need to get wherever you want to go. As I've said many times, I happen to believe that women have the power to create whatever we want. And I also know that our main source of strength and inspiration comes from one another. I cannot tell you how many requests I've received from women to share their stories on this podcast so they can help others see how their lives have changed as a result of stepping into an opportunity, listening to their intuition, or taking that leap, big or small, to see where it might take them. It's remarkable the spirit of generosity we have for one another because we know it can be difficult and because we've all been there. Always remember, life is additive. Our actions are meant to constantly improve the qualities of our lives. So when we think of the law of inspired action, it tells us we must take inspired steps towards that thing that we want in order to bring it into being. And we're doing that by bringing the power we have to make it happen into each other's consciousness every single episode. That's what moves us forward. The miracle, by the way, is always the end result. Even when it's not perfect or a bit messy, it's an experience that has taught us a valuable lesson, and that lesson takes us to the next level that we need to get to in our lives. And by the way, that next level looks different for everyone. But each time we push ourselves into becoming a little bit braver, we get closer to becoming the person we're meant to become. Now, I want to share something with you that I found so powerful when I was contemplating the name change for the podcast. I was toying with the idea of calling it Change Mavericks. Journeys Through Change eventually won out, but the concept of maverick has stuck with me because I think we all can be mavericks. A maverick is defined as someone who is independent-minded with an unconventional approach to life. Now, this is not something reserved for only the disruptors or charismatic personalities in the bunch. It merely speaks to those of us who are willing to chart our own course and take on challenges with greater courage and confidence. All attributes of the women who share their stories with me, as well as those of you who are just waiting to let that aspect of yourself show up and be seen. We can all be mavericks by letting go of old stories and overcoming limiting beliefs to improve our lives. Now, I'm going to make a very simple suggestion that on the surface may not sound like much, but it can make a world of difference when it comes to shifting the way you see yourself and what you're capable of doing, having, or being. Pay attention to your thoughts. Your thoughts are the key to everything. Also, know this. A belief is simply a thought you think over and over again. It took me a while to wrap my head around that one. So when limiting beliefs about ourselves, like I could never do that, or I know I won't succeed, or that's just not for me, when those come up, it's time to stop and ask yourself if those thoughts are really true. Or are they ideas about yourself that you learned growing up, or maybe just along the way, that may need to be challenged? I can say in my life, I spent a great deal of my time seeking out comfort and predictability, working 9 to 5 and letting the world of corporate define who I was and what I was worth. It was not until I started to question that I realized it was a belief that I had since childhood, that trading my time for money in a traditional day job was the only way I would ever survive. And I found my worth in that. It's not until I began to ask myself, is that really true? That I realized it was nothing more than messaging I'd received all my life. That a strong work ethic was a sign of good character, measured by how much time was spent on the clock, and the regularity of a biweekly paycheck was the ultimate goal. Now, was that realization comfortable? Hell no. Did it dredge up a whole host of other insecurities around self-worth, confidence, and money? Absolutely. But I will say, going through the discomfort and coming out the other end, knowing that this is just conditioning, lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. Now, as I've said before, it's so important to recognize that our thoughts cause our emotions, and our emotions drive our actions, which in turn create the outcomes in our lives. So thoughts are a pretty big deal. I cannot emphasize it enough. The thoughts you allow to swim around in your head can be the difference between success and failure. So it takes conscious action to stop yourself when a limiting thought comes to mind. Since they come from years and years of conditioning, you need to take pause and reframe them. So a thought like, I could never leave this relationship, or starting my own business is such a pipe dream, beg the question, is that really true? We all know taking the steps to change any area of our lives can be scary. So I want to give you a few things to think about when the idea of something in your life being better sets you into a tailspin of fear, doubt, or anxiety. Become the observer. Think of this as an experiment. Write down the thoughts that come to mind when you start to entertain even a shift in perspective around your current situation. What are the potential outcomes that could come from looking at it differently? Okay, with all of this said, just to dip your toe in the water with all of this, I'm leaving you with a simple exercise. As we are getting ready to dive into the latter part of this year and think about 2024, I want you to do a little regroup and ask yourself a few very important questions. Number 1, what is working in my life? And I want you to look at the areas of your relationships, career, health, or lifestyle. Number 2, what is not working? And then take a stab at why. Number 3, what is one change I want to make to improve my life this coming year? And then finally, what thoughts come up around that? Now write down your answers, and under each thought, if they are reflecting old beliefs that you're holding on to, I want you to ask the question, is that really true? And if not, take a shot at reframing how you think about the situation. What do you need to potentially let go of in order to invite something new or different or better into your life? And let them be the seeds you plant today to start contemplating change in the new year. And we'll all be here to support you every step of the way. That's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.